Couldn't he bother coming back?
He's on his iPhone.
He does. Model drop-in centre, as the Mayor said.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Kewen, have you got your camera on there, please?
Yeah, do you want my camera on?
Yeah, we made a rule last week. Unless there's something,
Oh, okay.
unless there's something wrong with your face.
Surgery.
Does how many clothes I'm wearing count?
No.
Oh, oh wow. Someone's actually pleased to see that. That makes a change.
Okie dokie. And Celeste is still there?
She is not currently.
Put it down for lateness in the afternoon. All right, so welcome back, everyone. Well, nearly everyone. Thank you all who have come back. Now that brings us to item 11, Climate Resilience Strategy Implementation Progress. We've got Tony and
Joy.
Welcome.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. The Kia Turawa Te Au Autatahi Christchurch Resilience Strategy Progress Report was requested by Council, and the portfolio holder, Councillor Templeton, is going to say a few words before we introduce ourselves.
Yeah. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for bringing this today. It is the first of what will be a series of reports on the implementation of Kia Turawa Te Ao, the Climate Resilience Strategy. You know, it's a work in progress, so it's here so that the colleagues can see what's useful, what's not, what they might expect to see in a report. And also you can see for those who weren't around when the strategy was approved, you can see the really, really broad range of things that it covers. And we're probably at the point now where we need to maybe even relook a little bit at the strategy, not revise it and all of the work that's involved in that, but actually see where we think that we could get the most benefit for the efforts that we're making, rather than, I guess, spreading ourselves too thinly across all of it. So as you look at it today, keep those kind of things in mind. And I think that, like to thank staff. It's been not easy to go across the whole organisation to see what's happening where, but thank you for doing that, Mahi. And I guess my colleagues will have a few questions, so thanks.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. I'll just do a brief intro as well. The progress report collects the key achievements by teams right across Council since June 2021, when the strategy was adopted. Focuses on what has been done and includes significant activities, but not every activity. It also provides a list of key activities being undertaken by Council over the next 6 months or so. We've highlighted projects in terms of mitigation, adaptation and information provision relating to the 10 programs identified in the strategy. The report also shows that while the task is huge, not every task is covered. Significant progress has been made across all areas, progress that will help us in reducing emissions, adapting to reduce climate risk, using tools that help to understand the risks and providing emission inventories that track how we're doing. We recognise that we can't do everything all at once, and we need to adjust our priorities and work within our resources. The report demonstrates that a lot of important foundational work has been done and is underway. High-level KPIs are the next step. So these have been developed within a cross-council staff working group that will help us prioritise work, monitor progress and provide regular reports to Council as requested every 6 months. Future reports will be a bit shorter. This one just takes us up to the present day from the adoption date in June 21. Right. As noted, we've compiled this report with teams across the Council, so there are some areas where we won't be able to dig into the detail for you right here, but may be able to provide information. However, we do welcome your questions if you have any.
Excellent. That's a really nice introduction. So appreciating this is the first report since the adoption, and the future reports will probably be more specific. You'll have your KPIs in place by then. And how often will the reporting be?
Every 6 months.
6 months, right.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Coco?
It'd be good to be able to track the sea level rise, because we've done a lot of work visiting communities around Peninsula, but the big money is going to be in our coastal communities, which is Brighton, right, say North Beach, right through to Sumner Taylors, whatever, probably Sumner. So it'd be really good because we've got nearly 34,000 with notices of limbs, and I think as a city we need to know, as data comes to us, because let's be honest, we've got an idea, but it can vary so much. It's like a dart into a wall, let's be honest. But that we need that information, because in the future, if we look at all the coastal New Zealand, there's no way the government's going to help us. So we've got to have some kind of idea. And smaller communities around New Zealand just don't have the ability. So thank you.
Absolutely, and noted. And the Risk Explorer tool is helping us to do that. We're also noting vertical land movement, because not only is the sea level rising, but some areas the land is dropping. So those sort of things, yes, on a radar and definitely
It's not getting better.
Right, thank you. Councillor Coker?
There's a few wee things. This is a lot of information, which is good. What I found hard was how to compare this to the climate resilience strategy, and I thought it would, I was looking at these points and the ones that are predicted, and we're trying to, it would be much better if the whole strategy was there with the points and these were noted and what things, so we can see what's. Do you understand what I'm saying?
understand.
So closer connection.
You see where the gaps are, and I know that this is incremental over time, but it still is good to see which bits are being addressed and which bits are not. Maybe, yeah. There were some points I was a little bit like, for instance, number 4 on program 1 about, say, the sustainability fund, and it said like that was completed, and some of these points I didn't feel like they were completed. They're kind of like ongoing points, and I kind of get why they're there, but it's also have you got anything to comment on with that? Because obviously that fund isn't finished yet, and
So sure, I mean obviously the completed ongoing, if it was ongoing we put it into the future actions, but we couldn't put the sustainability fund into the future actions because currently it was offered up as a saving, my understanding. So that's why we looked back and said, what has the sustainability fund achieved, which is the way that it was presented.
Because on that same vein, there's the biodiversity fund and the environmental partnership fund, and they're going to change their name. So I guess that's something to be kind of aware of as well, because those names will be different to what you've got noted here. That'll do at the moment.
Now, Councillor Henstock.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to pull my papers up. Under next steps, I note that it says the implementation staff working group will develop the key performance indicators. Will we have any input into what those KPIs look like, or will they just arrive at the table in the next 6 months' time?
Well, I guess that's up to this council if you want to have input into that process. At the moment, we are looking at across the strategy on climate change and seeing what other key measures we have within our long-term plan already, so levels of service that you've already approved, and then working with colleagues to see if there's any other gaps we could fill. So at the moment, really, it's around process. So we are gathering that data, gathering the evidence, and we could bring that to you to have a conversation if that was what you wished.
That would be my preference. I wonder whether there's any other thoughts in the room about that.
I mean, I personally think that a workshop on it would be great.
Yep. Is that what you wanted?
Okay. Yep. A couple of other things for me. I note references to 54% of our emissions coming from transport. Do you have any breakdown in relation to that? You know, whether it's freight, public transport from buses, taxis, Uber, commercial vehicles, tradies, couriers, etc. Are you gathering any of that data?
So the emissions report that was given to you some months ago now, that did contain a bit more information than just the headline indicator. but it's based on fuel sales. So it's a matter of, is it diesel or petrol? And then we've made some assumptions around how much is used for shipping and aviation. So we don't have it down to the vehicle type, which is, I think, what you're asking. So the answer is no, we don't have that level of detail.
Right. So when we have our conversations around the appropriate KPIs, perhaps we can have a closer look at how we want the information you've got reported to us.
Certainly.
Would be my recommendation in that regard. The other comment I've got is I'm just scrolling my papers up if I can to page 288. Just bear with me. It's in relation to, we're touching on PT Futures, which you've got implementation of the Greater Christchurch Transport Futures business case there. I'm keen to understand how the GPS on transport is now affecting this in terms of what we're doing, and two, the timelines on when we're expecting to achieve it, recognising that the GPS has implications for us from a funding perspective. So just keen to hear from you as to what impact that's having and whether you've made any changes to what you're doing in your timelines. Thank you.
So we aren't the transport team, and I'm sure your question would be answered by the strategic transport planning team. I think that would be where that would best sit. So we don't have an answer for you on that particular question at the moment.
The Christchurch Transport Plan is due to come to council for adoption for consultation after the long-term plan has finished. It was supposed to be early this. Well, in fact, it was supposed to be a year and a half ago, but then it was supposed to be earlier this year, and now it'll be after the LTP. And there's more detail about all of the specific stuff in that plan.
Right. Thanks, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison-Hunt.
Kia ora. I'm looking at the key climate actions plan for the next 6 months, and the work program's massive. It's ginormous. Are these attainable in its current form, or are they more, what's the word I'm trying to look for here? It's 2 o'clock.
Aspirational.
Aspirational. Thank you very much.
Sure.
There's a collection of work that teams across the council have underway and are planning to do, absolutely.
Okay. And in terms of the KPI-based structure, is that a feasible measure to be using around climate targets, or would outcomes-based measures be more proficient in managing our emissions?
So we're looking at a combination of different indicators. You're right that we have one indicator, which is, of course, the emissions for the city and the council. They're clearly outcome indicators, but there may be some other indicators that look at more progress over time on a range of different topics.
So it's sort of multifaceted is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. No, that's great. That's me for now. I've got some other questions.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fully supportive of the idea there of a workshop around the KPI setting and having some corredo around this and try and work through together to some good measurables. Really interested to sort of try and unpack a wee bit as to what we might see as our best bang for buck moving forward in this mission space.
Oh, that's a very broad question. We wouldn't want to pick winners in this space. Obviously, the key areas of emissions reduction and adaptation to reduce climate risk are very important. I can say that adaptation and preparing to reduce climate risk does have a good return on it. The recent inquiry into the cyclone Gabrielle and the Auckland floods has shown that there's a 1-to-4 return ratio for infrastructure preparation, and also preparing to make sure that the area is less damaged in a climate event has, according to the UN Disaster Risk Reduction Organisation, a 1-to-15 ratio. So all you can invest to prepare and build resilience is worthwhile.
Oh, just following on, in terms of emissions, of course, you've got our district footprint and our council footprint. That shows you where the largest source of greenhouse gases are coming from, and one would assume then that that's a place to focus as well.
Okay.
And I guess with that, one of the thoughts in my head is around the transport emissions particularly. best bang for buck, would you think that perhaps public transport promotion would be a wise investment to try and really get a decent chunk into that?
So there's obviously quite a number of different actions that we're putting forward in the strategic transport plan that will indicate where the transport team see the best bangs for buck. But in terms of behaviour change, which I think what I heard you say, that clearly encouraging people to walk, cycle, and bus is a relatively low cost, and if they do so, that's a high benefit in terms of the person, but also the environment. So it's a simple win, I would say.
Excellent,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and appreciate that there's more work that will be done. I was just interested in the the kind of actions around the sustainable food system. For example, it's got here, join the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. Are we going to get a report to council that we consider that? Is that what's happening? Or I just can't quite tell what the action is in terms of the sustainable food system, in terms of timing or decision making.
Yep, that's correct. And so what we've got in that piece of the document is just actions that are being proposed for us to undertake over the next 6 months or so. And so the invitation to join the Milan Urban Food Pact has been made to us by European relationships. And so it's up to this council if we choose to agree to that or not. So it would have to be a report to council then.
And just one question on the waste recovery. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there around circular economy, promotions for reuse and recycling of items not collected by council. I'm just kind of wondering, like, how do we get visibility? Obviously, one of the areas that I'm really interested in is what we're doing with e-waste as a city or as a region, and there's nothing visible that I can see in terms of an action. Is that picked up on any of those other work streams that are proposed, or would it be better to specifically mention our interest in it?
So the Sustainability Fund that previously supported 2 electronic waste recycling sort of processes. One was called Recycle a Device, and the other was called Multimedia Trust. Both of those groups, not-for-profit groups, taking electronic waste from the community and reprocessing it. So that's one very small example of how that fund has been applied. In terms of the wider move around electronic waste, if it's not already in the waste minimisation plan, they're proposing to refresh that plan, and maybe there's an opportunity through that process to have a wider lens on waste in the city, and taking a circular approach, and also thinking about electronic waste.
Yeah, I mean, for example, do we know how much e-waste council produces per annum?
So I don't know the answer to that question, but perhaps through our procurement and IT team, they may have an answer for you. I'm sure that we have been donating a lot of second-hand items, used by council second-hand items to community groups. I know that's a program underway.
Yeah, nearly all probably.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just one other question I had. In terms of the next 6 months, there's reference to Plan Change 7 to the district plan to limit Indigenous vegetation clearance in coastal environments. Do we know if that plan change is on track, has got funding or resourcing, and do we know if that extends to the river environment as well, where we are seeing a lot of industrial type development and clearance of vegetation?
Yeah, we can't answer the detail on that.
Right.
But certainly the plan is still to do that.
Do you have
Plan
a
change
comment?
7.
Oh, you want? Oh, there we are. Hello. Perfect.
No.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we are.
The proposed plan change deals with Indigenous vegetation clearance in the coastal environment, principally in Banks Peninsula, but it affects the margins in the urban environment where there is Indigenous vegetation. In terms of the detail, I would need to give you a fuller answer offline, but it has been delayed on several occasions, including COVID, resourcing of the intensification plan change, but also the previous government introduced national direction on Indigenous vegetation, and we were reviewing that, and before we did further work on the plan change, we wanted to understand that national direction and what it meant, rather than continuing with the plan change and then finding it's inconsistent with that new national direction.
Right.
This new government has indicated changes to that national direction, so we're just still on pause and we'll report back to you separately on that. We do have a submission coming to council in the near future on the revisions proposed to the national direction on biodiversity. So
Thank you.
So I've just got a quick question on the, you mentioned the Milan Urban Food Pact and the council could join that. What's the process with that? I mean, I haven't actually opened the link yet, I'm sorry. So are you intending to bring an options report or anything on that, or is it just up to us to pick it up if we want to?
Well, in the past, the Mayor has signed up to similar sorts of arrangements, but if there's general interest, I mean, I guess it's again an opportunity to bring it to the council to make a decision on that.
Okay, well, perhaps we'll bring that up at a later meeting. I'll have a look into it and we might bring it through, if the Mayor's supportive, we could bring it through a Mayor's report and just, if it's not onerous. And the newly created food sector group, what is that?
So that's, you may recall in the past we've talked about a food policy council. It's a cross-sector representation of the food sector in Christchurch. So thinking about community groups, thinking about supermarkets, thinking about producers and you know, marketing of food as well, and bring them in one room effectively to meet regularly to look at the issues and opportunities for healthy food in Christchurch. So that's the
championing that, is that council?
That is currently for the Strengthening Communities team to take forward.
That's really good, yeah. And when you talk about other municipalities, so like working with other municipalities to foster regenerative urban, I mean, how are other cities doing around New Zealand? I kind of felt that Christchurch is quite a leader in this area. Would that be correct? Or?
Yes, that's right. So Christchurch is seen as a leader in New Zealand. We've been on this road for quite some time, and we've got some really wonderful community groups out there delivering some fantastic results for our community.
Yeah.
And so we're extremely lucky, actually, as a council to have them working so hard for the community. And it's a matter of us supporting, where appropriate, those groups to thrive.
That's right, 48 community gardens, and, actually 70 community gardens in Canterbury now. And we've been supporting those groups for many years now, so that's given us quite a head start because other cities are only just realising that this is the way to go. No, that's great. I think this is a really good introductory report and look forward to you know, more detail in the next one. And Councillor Harrison Hunt, you had another question? Yes. And Councillor Coker?
Kia ora again. This is in reference to number 6 on page 277, establishing the climate resilience team within the strategic policy and resilience unit. I wanted to ask, does the team work within council and policymakers over every single unit that we have?
Wherever that's relevant, absolutely. So we have a staff working group, which is about 16 people altogether, and every piece of work that needs to involve other teams absolutely does. So we have worked together to produce this report as the sort of starting place for us. It has taken a significant amount of work and a lot of talking to get everybody's information on one page, and everyone is doing so much work. It's accounting for that is important, but also important to allow us to get on and do the work too, not just focus on reporting.
The key question I've got for this is particularly around our infrastructure, mainly around resource consents and or really public-private relationships, particularly around greenhouse gas emissions. The question I've got is there any work around best practice for construction for those private entities to be able to help assist them to go for that resource consent, ensuring best practice and climate strategies? It's a big question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big, and so effectively what you're saying is, are we helping to manage greenhouse gas emissions from infrastructure? And of course, you might recall that through the long-term plan, climate resilience was one of the key drivers of the long-term plan. So we looked at it across all of our activity areas and including in the infrastructure strategy. So the council's infrastructure strategy saw climate change as a key risk and a key opportunity to include in that work, which then hopefully trickles down to all of the infrastructure projects we're directly involved in. But I heard you say about industry more generally speaking. And so there are many actors out there, different consulting firms that have lots of tools that help people understand the greenhouse gas emissions associated with infrastructure, and they can then take that into account when they're designing things. So, for example, Waka Kotahi have a projects emissions estimator tool called PEAT tool, and that looks at infrastructure, roading infrastructure and the carbon footprint of that. But there are other tools out there as well. So industry is well ahead actually in understanding greenhouse gas emissions and managing those. Our procurement, of course, helps support that as well. So when we're buying goods and services, we do also ask about the footprint of the activities we're undertaking as well. But there's always room to improve.
I
Great,
see.
thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Councillor Coker?
That's great.
With the planned actions for the next 6 months, the emissions reduction plan, which will be a big piece of work, but do you have any idea what the kind of time frame will be to develop that? Will you be able to do it in those 6 months, or will it take longer than that?
We're aiming to do that soon, I believe.
The answer is yes, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have commissioned a consultancy firm to help us with that, and their piece of the work is due to be delivered in July.
Oh, wow.
So at that point...
This July?
Yes.
Very impressive.
So at that point, we will have a look at what they've come up with, and there's been a lot of staff input into that also, and work through the next steps with our senior leaders and hopefully bring something to you as soon as we can.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one other thing. With this is a separate point, number 73 on the same page about exploring including climate-related risk and financial disclosure information in the annual report. Because it's just an explore at this stage. Is it quite a tricky thing to do?
So the disclosures report asks us really to understand what climate risks are represented for the organisation, and then also our emissions profile, which we both have, and we're building the database around risks, and then obviously to publicly disclose that. Now, very few councils in New Zealand have done that, but Auckland is a standout for having done that several years in a row now. So we're looking at it as a way of creating more profile for the climate change topic and getting it embedded throughout the organisation as part of our risk management and financial management processes.
Because from following from there, that's really good. The thing I was hoping to see for this long-term plan, but about, when we look at projects, how to assess how much they're either hindering or helping us with our climate goals. So is that something that would follow from that?
It's probably not. This disclosure is a compilation of do we have the systems and processes in place to help us answer those questions, and then obviously disclosing our performance. So it's supportive, but it's not quite probably as specific as you're after there.
And is there a plan to be doing that sometime?
So the council has asked staff to give you advice on that, and we're preparing that advice at the moment. So last month you asked us to look at how the pathway for understanding the emissions associated with the capital program, and we're doing that at the moment.
And Sarah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just on those climate-related disclosures, there's a legal framework nationally now for major corporations and listed corporations to do with those, and some organisations have done voluntary ones. This is the first year where it's mandatory for the listed organisations to do those disclosures. CCHL is one of those companies, and so CCHL are currently going through that quite full-on process, scenario planning, and because CCHL is, each of the subsidiaries have had to do that as well, even though actually only CIAL I think was specifically listed as well.
Oh,
So,
that's excellent. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, there's a lot of work happening on that space.
And the last question from Councillor Henstock.
Well, thank you, Pauline. I can't help but think that if we really want to make positive change for good, then we have to take our communities with us on this journey. And in that regard, I'm keen to understand what are the pathways, if any, that we have for the public to really engage in our efforts in this climate resilient space. And in particular, I'm thinking about the innovation space. We've got lots of people out there far brainier than us in many of these aspects, who with some incredibly innovative and ambitious ideas to help us on this journey. Do we make it easy for them to come and talk to us and present their ideas for us? Help me understand what that space looks like, please.
Sure. There's two parts to your question. I'm going to get the communication piece to be answered by Joy, and then I'll respond to the innovation piece.
Right, thank you. So there is a lot of communications and information sharing through the work that Council is doing. It is pitted throughout the report, but just to bring it all together, basically we're doing a huge range of things, including we have a professional, we co-host a professional group of council staff involved in climate change work that includes over 280 people in the Aotearoa Council Climate Network. We have the Christchurch Conversations program you will be aware of, Christchurch Innovation and Climate events that we support. It's Time Canterbury information on our website, child and youth education initiatives that are supported by Council. You'll be aware of the Water Like You Water campaign, which was incredibly successful. Travel demand program that is helping workplaces, households and school students make clean travel choices. We're working with communities to prepare for climate events and for coastal hazards. We are providing advice on healthy homes, and there is basically a lot of communication and other activities that are going on to help communicate and engage with the public. I'll pass on for the economic answer.
Wow, that's an incredible answer.
So, I mean, I think even though it doesn't mention the word climate change, it's still related, of course, if you're encouraging people to minimise waste and travel differently and, make their homes more efficient. It's still under the, the banner of climate change, just not necessarily called that. In terms of innovation, though, we're very lucky, of course, to have a smart Christchurch strategy, which takes climate change as one of its key sort of challenges that we're facing and using innovative approaches to try and, come up with solutions for that. But we've been running through the Smart Christchurch and with, of course, Christchurch New Zealand, Christchurch NZ, a range of challenges. So there's, for example, the food, fibre and agri-tech challenge, because agricultural emissions is really New Zealand's largest source of emissions. So having innovators here locally explore different solutions to that problem has been incredibly helpful. So, and we've run a number of other events as well. There's quite a few, but obviously the most recent, the Smart Christchurch Expo tries to engage with the residents and the community and other businesses, trying to provide a profile for all those innovators so that people can experience the innovations that they're exploring and put it on the mainstream. So, and also involve, of course, youth. So there has been a lot of different events that have been run over the last few years, and we're very lucky that next year there's also another event about adaptation that Canterbury University is hosting as well. And so that's another opportunity to engage both nationally but internationally too around the topic of adaptation. So we're starting to explore what that means for us and our council and the role we might be able to take to support that innovation event effectively on adaptation in Christchurch.
Great, thank you very much.
Can I just add to that, Pauline, please? A lot of these seem to be formal engagement processes and events. I'm thinking about the average man on the street who's got an idea that they'd like to float with council and present to someone and talk about it. And is there a pathway for them to come and to talk to someone at council? And what does that look like?
I would say the public forum would be the place, wouldn't it?
Well, we've had Rod Karen, which has been really good, and we've had other people feel like they've come in and done public forums and stuff.
That's one way. I mean, I get phone calls all the time actually from those sorts of people actually. So, I mean, people do ring their council and say, I've got an idea for, a climate solution. Who do I talk with? So, I mean, our climate team is able to take those calls and then direct the person to the most relevant staff member if that's, if it's a particular part of the puzzle we need to direct them towards.
Fantastic.
So there are ways.
Thank you. And very last question, Councillor Fields.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit late to the party on this one. Apologies if this has been asked and answered, but the State Highway 75 connects, several of our communities. It's the only road in and out to a lot of places, and obviously it's out of scope of our infrastructure. But like, how can I be sure that the risks there are sort of covered and captured through this, really, because it has been quite, especially last winter, was quite exposed to a lot of impacts of climate change, slips and flooding and stuff, and there is other work actually being led by council, particularly in Little River, around climate resilience and flooding resilience there. So yeah, we sort of capturing that.
I can say that the transport team is doing a lot of planning on both criticality and infrastructure networks. It's really a question for them to answer on the detail, but certainly transport criticality in emergency events, for example, is high on the radar.
But do we have like visibility of that work through this report? I guess.
Yes, we will. We have more and more visibility about transport issues. Our team is actually working on another project with the transport team in terms of what's happening in that space.
So you are working together across all the different departments, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, as long as there's visibility of it, I guess is probably what I'm getting at. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Templeton, I'm assuming you'd like to move this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harrison Hunt. Is there any debate? If not, I'll put them.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank staff again for the amount of time and effort put into this, and I think that all of us need to take a little bit of time and work out, I think, which areas we should focus on the most to get the most action in the shortest amount of time. Things that are low-hanging fruit and those kind of things, but things where we can make quick progress, if you like, and should be a priority at this stage, while still chugging away on those sometimes the bigger pieces which make the biggest difference in the long run. So it'll be good, and we'll have a workshop on that kind of stuff soon. So thanks.
Yes, I think if we got a note of that, like a workshop, we don't have to put it in the resolution, but we'll. Yes, thank you for that. And also, can we just take a note of that Milan Urban Food Pact, that we raise that with the Mayor and see if we want to join that for discussion offline. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. So that takes us now to item 12, getting there.